but they can have profound loss in both ears and identify themselves as hearing or hard of hearing. It's more of a cultural choice. Make sense? Do you have any questions on that? Questions? Why would we not want to say hearing impaired? If the members of the deaf community do not see themselves as having a disability, why would hearing impaired just...
Because you're label.
That impaired
They don't consider
Impaired means imperfect, not normal, abnormal. And I don't know how much we've discussed into this, but you kind of have to ask yourself, what is normal?
Yeah.
To put myself in the deaf perspective, I kind of think maybe we were all born weird and we're supposed to be deaf. You kind of have to put yourself in that, when I get into it.
Okay.
You have to kind of put yourself in the deaf perspective though. They've accepted themselves as deaf, they're going to grow up their entire lives. If they've chosen to culturally be deaf, big D deaf. It's kind of I have my own culture, I have my own language. I'm fine, I'm good, I don't need to be fixed. I'm normal as it gets. I'm fine. I don't need to be helped, I don't need to be fixed, I don't need to be pitied. And I don't want you, and on the 5-hour deaf where you have to pretend to be 5 hours, we're not wanting this so you guys can not listen to music all day and then at the end of the day be like, oh my gosh, it was so sad. I didn't get to hear my favorite song. I didn't hear the rain. It was so hard. It's not for pittiness. We don't want you guys to pity deaf culture. We just want you to know what it's like and to maybe even experience what it's like to be in
How other people
perceive, right.
accept or don't accept.
Right.
Yeah.
And what it's like to be part of a minority. We're all the majority as hearing people too. We're the hearing majority. What it's like to be part of a linguistic minority. So just on that note. And someone asked today, what if someone pretends to be deaf? While I'm on that, is they were like, I heard that it's bad if you pretend to be deaf. We're gonna do that for 5 hours. They'll understand. You're doing it too for a reason, to immerse yourself in a culture. You're learning their language. You guys are okay. They're like, they're gonna jump me. Because for some weird, odd reason, people pretend to be deaf. I don't know why. It's a fight for attention. It's a need to be included because they know that there is a culture if you pretend to be deaf, and there's a language. The need to fit in. Sometimes they want money from the government, so you can collect Social Security. So it's a huge, big deal in the deaf community if they catch you pretending to be deaf.
Yes.
That's different, definitely.
That's
Sometimes everyone does more
hearing.
the selective hearing.
Can they medically prove deafness?
I had that question today too. There's probably they can probably put you in a brain scanner and make a noise and see if it registers somewhere. I'm not really sure about that.
Isn't it the drums or the...
Maybe the eardrums. They can check to see if your
Yeah.
cochlear is, all your hairs are there.
Yeah, the vibration.
But really, how are you?
You really can't get in the
How are you going to be able to? There's someone you suspect, like you're deaf. There's someone you suspect. I think they're pretending to be deaf. How are you going to get them into the hospital and do that? You know what I mean? Because otherwise,
For them to collect their Social Security disability.
They'll put
or
them
something
through.
like
They'll
that.
put them
a grant. All they have to do is just not raise their hand when they hear
Social Security will put
beep.
you through all the tests.
But there's no, you don't have to, you're not required to go through a test like that. All you have to do is go to an audiologist, and all you do is just not raise your hand when you hear the beep.
Yeah. See, my mom thought I was just being stubborn when I was a child. She did. She thought, well, she just got selective hearing at a very young age. Until one
Start
day,
early.
when I was out in the yard playing, I was busy, and she kept calling me. I didn't flinch. She just got louder and louder and louder. Finally, she went in the house, got 2 pots and pans, and she came right up next to me and smashed them. And I didn't jump,
Yep.
flinch, nothing, and I just kept doing what I was
And
doing.
and I've known people like that who
And
pretend
that's
to be
when she
deaf and they get
finally
caught.
realized- Well, that's when she finally realized, look, this kid's only like 2.5 years old, she can't be that good at it. yet.
Exactly. She needs to be scared right now.
Yeah.
Well, I know with Social Security right now, a friend of mine is trying to get Social Security with his disability. And they sent him a letter and said, you might as well just wait. You're on the list of 8,000.
Yeah.
So if you're
Well,
gonna
that's
try to
not
get
a
Social
lawyer.
Security to be deaf, then I would say that you're gonna have to play it up really good for a,
Now you get a
Yeah,
long time.
as long as you have the documentation from doctors and.
2 years
You're
already.
fine.
They've been
Yeah.
waiting, so,
You got a lawyer?
yeah.
And
Doesn't matter. It's how many people
And it's
are
really
trying to get
sad
Social
because the
Security.
deaf community
Well-
has not fought and tried for these laws to be passed and for them equality to happen for all these years to be made a mockery of.
The other,
So that's
the
why it's
other
such a big
sad-
taboo.
The other sad part of that though is there are a lot of people that aren't deaf, that hearing aids and that kind of thing do
Right.
not work for. Our servicemen, young servicemen
Oh,
coming
yeah.
back with complete hearing loss.
Suffer from IEDs and stuff?
Mhm.
Is that's what it is, right?
Yes,
IEDs?
IEDs.
I figured
Yeah.
y'all two would know. IEDs.
And they
There
have
you go.
complete hearing loss, so they have to learn a whole new world. They do,
Yep.
which is,
We already know we don't say deaf mute. We already discussed that, how, and deaf and dumb, that goes without saying. Someone asked me, have you ever interpreted something that you just had to keep quiet about? And my first thing was when people say deaf and dumb, and I'm interpreting it, I can't say it, I just interpret deaf and dumb, and either the deaf person's like, whoa, 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 wait a second. I've laid into people before voicing for deaf people, and I love it. I'm like, yes. And then a lot of times they just let it slide. Usually it's older deaf people who are used to just accepting. I can't do anything to change it. When I'm like there's a hearing person at a doctor's office or something, deaf and dumb, because that's what they're used to saying, deaf and dumb.
That's how they stereotyped them back
That's-
years ago.
That's how
Yeah.
they stereotype them back then, and now it's just something that's just what people say. Because that's what's always been said, you know what I mean? Deaf and dumb, just like deaf mute.
So
Just
when
like
you
deaf.
speak what they're signing to, you can tear it.
Yeah, I maintain integrity. I maintain. Oh yeah, I've interpreted some really mean stuff, and some really offensive stuff, and everything. Everything. I was a high school interpreter. Like, there was a fight going on outside the classroom, and I heard it, which means I have to interpret it because the deaf student's right there. And in reality, if that student could hear it, or if that client could hear it, if they were hearing, I interpret it. And I'm like, blah, 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 like interpreting all this, blah, like a nasty language. And that deaf person's just like any kid's like,
Where'd that come from?
it's like, ha,
Okay.
who's fighting? But yeah, so, and it goes both ways. If the hearing client's being angry, if the hearing client's
that's what I used to
being
do when I was
mean,
doing
and
it.
the other way around. Everything, interpret everything. Absolutely. Hard of hearing is someone with minor hearing loss. That's what the medical term is, but they could be, sometimes they're profoundly deaf and they say they're hard of hearing. It's just the medical term. Dual sensory loss. Dual meaning two. Deaf blind. About 3 to 6% of deaf children are born deaf, and then they acquire Usher syndrome. Does anyone know what Usher syndrome is? It's
Dancing.
You say cancer.
Dancing.
Dancing.
It's so wrong, he's full of it, right?
You are full of it. Usher syndrome is when your sight slowly goes black. Sometimes it stays at one point. And it's just mentioned because 3 to 6 deaf children require Usher syndrome, and then they're considered deaf blind. Studies have shown if 2 parents have recessive genes at the same time, Usher syndrome is likely to occur. So they can kind of spot before your child's born if they check your genes and stuff that they're going to have Usher syndrome. Deaf blindness is a whole nother bit, a whole different way to interpret, a whole different way to communicate. Just kind of mentioning it here. Coda, we all know what this is? A coda? Can we talk about that? No? A child of a deaf adult. Meaning both parents are deaf or one parent's deaf. Scratch that. I want you guys to look at that yourself. Keith Wan is a very, very famous coda. It's got CrossFit stuff here. It's a very famous coda. And he's a stand-up comedian. His wife interprets for him. He's deaf, but he signs the entire time, and his wife interprets for hearing people. But he grew up with two deaf parents, and he goes around. He made all these jokes about just a stand-up comedian about growing up deaf, about how his mom would vacuum and he would unplug the vacuum cleaner. About how
That's funny.
how one time the teacher in like 2nd grade asked them to teach all the kids in the class to sign a story or to sign a song, and he didn't know that they were going to do it on stage at a performance. And he does a whole skit about how he tries to make them stop, and they're doing all crazy stuff like trees are like this, this is how you sign tree, and it's hilarious. It's a really cool perspective. But he's hilarious. He does a lot of songs. Remember how I told you guys about songs? You have to look at what it really means. Have you ever seen him do Ice Ice Baby? It's hilarious.
I was reading this newspaper article the other day, and it said that deaf people are the safest drivers around. Bullshit. Well, no, hear me out. Hear me out. Now, you hearing people are so bad. I mean, this is what hearing people look like.
Do you guys see it? Let me turn off the light.
And, I mean, can you imagine what, I mean, that's still safer than what deaf people do. Because imagine, I'll show you what deaf drivers look like. My family car